Welcome to another episode of Preferred Walk-On, PFF's college football show. I'm your host, Max Chadwick, alongside my co-host, Dalton Wasserman, and we have an absolutely loaded show for you guys today. Dalton, a ton of stories broke over the weekend. It was an unreal weekend of college football to begin with. Then a ton of stories broke over the weekend, and we're also getting into our New Year's Six bowl projections, and of course, trivia at the end of the show. I'll see if I can do better than my 4 for 5 performance last week. But man, we have a lot to talk about today, Dalton.
We sure do. I mean, the word for me right now is tension. It feels like whether you're in the playoff race or out of it, or your season's over, bowl game, not, everything feels so tense, doesn't it, Max? And between the games on the field being a ton of them incredibly close, we got some great games over the weekend. The action we're getting off the field, some teams are starting their off season already. To be honest with you, you've got, this season's got everything. It's got action, it's got great teams, it's got controversy, it's got what's going to be an unbelievable playoff race. Speculation, just everything. We've got everything on the table right now, and you look in every direction. There is no shortage of things to talk about and see right now. There's so much going on, and we still have 2 weeks left just of the regular season with massive games to go, and then conference championships. We're in for a wild ride for the next month and a half.
Oh, we absolutely are. And we have to start with the biggest story that broke over the weekend, which is Texas A&M is moving on from Jimbo Fisher. He is no longer the Texas A&M head coach. We had kind of inklings that this would happen, but man, they set the record, Dalton, for the biggest buyout in college football history. They are paying Jimbo Fisher basically $75 million to stay at home now. The previous record was Gus Malzahn at $21.5 million. So over 3 times that is what Texas A&M is paying. And not only that, they're paying over $100 million when you factor in all the staff that they're letting go as well. So Texas A&M, a pretty penny they are spending to get rid of Jimbo Fisher. And of course, they're going to hire a new coach too. Probably going to be a splash hire. But overall, Dalton, what are your initial takeaways from Texas A&M letting go of Jimbo Fisher?
Well, I would take a $75 million severance. I wouldn't hate that. But no, I think this is such a matter of expectation and how hard it is to win in the SEC, and especially the SEC West. For as long as Nick Saban is sitting there, and now Kirby Smart at Georgia, the expectation of winning the SEC and going to the playoff. Now, a 12-team playoff is going to change things now.
Yeah.
So that now it becomes a very different animal, and I wonder if that played a factor into this of we need to raise the standard. Because honestly, Texas A&M, the last couple of years, they have played like a relatively average football team, right? We make a bowl game, we win 7 or 8. In the SEC, 7 or 8 wins is kind of average, right? They really need – there's a significant step up between Alabama and even LSU and Ole Miss still, and where Texas A&M is right now. I think the SEC, there's a pretty clear top half and bottom half, right? You've got all the contenders, the ranked teams, and then you've got teams floating below that, clearly below that in A&M and Florida and South Carolina and Mississippi State. And he said, Mississippi State letting go of Zach Arnett too. They're trying to bridge that gap, and if they don't feel like they can bridge that gap with Jimbo Fisher, they're going to feel like this is the right move. I think we're about to get into this argument, but the expectation is so high at A&M, it's going to be hard for anybody to fulfill that.
Yeah, so my take is this. So I think we might disagree on how good the job is. My take is this is maybe a top 10 job in the country, and I would say probably a top 15 job in the country, mainly because of the deep pockets that those boosters have at Texas A&M. I mean, we just showed you guys. They're paying $75 million to Jimbo Fisher. Every other school in the country, first of all, wouldn't give that kind of contract to Jimbo to begin with because it couldn't afford it. Secondly, they wouldn't do it because they're like, okay, we can't afford to fire him. Texas A&M's like, no, we're firing him. We're starting over. We're paying over $100 million to do this. That just shows how deep those pockets are in College Station. And it shows as well when you look at the 2022 recruiting class they brought in. Texas A&M, we talk about how Alabama and Georgia are the class of the SEC. Texas A&M in 2022 had the greatest recruiting class we've ever seen. And that usually is dominated by teams like Alabama, like Georgia, like Ohio State, the elite programs. Texas A&M, even though they went, I think, 8-4 the year before, they still had the greatest recruiting class ever, with 8 of the top 25 recruits in the country going to Texas A&M that year. And a lot of that was due to NIL. I mean, that started the whole controversy between Jimbo and Nick Saban when Nick Saban said, they buy all their players. It's like, yeah, morals aside, they can buy those players because they can afford to buy those players. The facilities, Kyle Field just got a lot of renovations done too. They got the football facilities that are top notch. I mean, they have some of the best facilities in the country. I think this is a program that has the resources to compete for national championships. They just haven't found the coach yet. Kevin Sumlin did not work out. Jimbo Fisher did not work out. This is a job that I think you could probably count on 2 hands the amount of coaches that will look at Texas A&M and say, yeah, you know what I have right now is probably better than that. Otherwise, any other coach in the country will look at that and say, man, that is a lot of resources, and I could win big at Texas A&M. So in my opinion, I think this is a top 10 to definitely top 15 job in the country. I don't know how you feel about it, though.
I think that's exactly how Jimbo Fisher went into it. Wow, look at all this stuff they have. Look at all this money. And I'm curious how many of these kids will think about the portal. I mean, I think there's still the thing in college where your head coach and your coaching staff that recruited you, you're kind of loyal. You're kind of loyal to them, and they brought you in still. Now, if you're just going and getting kids that don't fit your program, and you're just buying all the kids you can and all these stars on the recruiting things and all this, I don't know that works. You can have all the talent in the world, but clearly they don't execute. Max, Texas A&M, for as high as their expectations are and as much as we talk about them every year, they haven't won a conference title of any sort since 1998.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the standard and the expectation can be talked about all you want, but they haven't actually been at that level in almost 30 years. So they're searching for something that I think we've had some of these talks in the past with Notre Dame too, where it's like you're searching for something that I don't know is in front of you. You're competing with elite, it's the SEC, the elite of the program, Alabama. You're trying to get on Alabama's level, and they've beaten them a couple of times. I remember Johnny Manziel beating them, or they beat them 2 years ago at the last second, which is probably Jimbo's biggest win in A&M. Mm-hmm. But I think the expectation versus execution and what can realistically be expected here, you can have as many stars on the recruiting trail as you want, but if you don't execute, and those guys don't fit what you're trying to do, then it really doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, player development's a big thing, and Alabama's developing better players. Georgia's developing better players. It doesn't matter how good you think they are as high school seniors. You still have to develop them and get out there and execute. And they just haven't done that at the level that they expect to.
No, and I think that also goes back to the coach, though. I think it just goes back to they just haven't had a good coach yet. They haven't had Kevin. They had Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher.
Then what did Jimbo do at Florida State that's not working now?
I think he just didn't change his offense at all from Florida State to now. I don't think he ever changed. He's like a little bit dab with Sweeney, where it's just like, oh, what worked in 2013 will work in 2023. I think that's what his problem was at Texas A&M, in my opinion, was that the offense just didn't update ever. So
I will give you that. Yeah. But I don't know that that's so bad. I mean, I don't think every offense has to be like hyper speed. I don't think they run that like dissimilar an offense from Washington. I don't think it's that different an offense. Like Washington doesn't do a ton of like RPO crazy 2023 stuff. They execute what they do at a really, really high level.
Yeah, and to be fair, too, I mean, they had to start their star quarterback, Connor Wegman, go down early in the season. Like, who knows where A&M would be right now? I mean, they're still, I think, 6-4, I believe their record is right now. They lost by 3 to Ole Miss. I like Jimbo. I think he's a good coach. But again, in my opinion, I mean, when you look at how good a job is, you got to separate kind of what the trophy case is from how good an actual job is. Because in terms of a job, in terms of how much money you get to play around with, in terms of the facilities you have, I mean, you could get the best players in the country to go to this school with a good coach. They just have to get that coach. Where it's like Georgia. You look at Georgia, man. Georgia didn't win anything since the 80s before Kirby Smart. They get but everyone kind of knew, hey, they have the resources. Georgia
with Mark Richt was better than Texas A&M currently is. Well, I don't think that's true either.
But Georgia was like a top 15.
I think A&M this is gonna sound. I think A&M with the cash and the glitz and glamour and in Texas and all this. I think it's the best job in theory. I think it's why Jimbo Fisher took the job. Jimbo Fisher he's a great coach. When Jimbo Fisher got that job, he was undoubtedly a top 5 coach in the country. He has a national title under his belt. And in this era, with Saban winning half of them and Smart winning the other half, it's really hard to get a trophy. And what you're competing with, I just think there's a significant gap. I don't know, other than the cash, the paycheck is ridiculous. The paycheck to leave is ridiculous, clearly. But I don't know that this is the elite job. You know, we can get into it now. The name I've seen thrown around the most for this is Dan Lanning. And if I'm Dan Lanning, why would I leave?
Yeah, agreed. I agree with that.
I've got just as good a paycheck. I've got Nike, man. Why would I leave Oregon? Now I'm going to the Big Ten.
Oh yeah, going to the Big Ten. Also, that's one of those jobs. So we'll talk about another name that I think is being thrown around. That again is like in that Dan Lanning camp where it's like, I don't think you should leave. Mike Norvell, I've seen thrown around a lot too, where it's like, dude, he's got a cushy job.
The way the ACC is right now, I wouldn't leave there either.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like you look at that. I think for a head coach to leave a job for another one, it has to be a significant jump, I think, in order to do that. Dan Lanning and Mike Norvell, I think Florida State and Oregon are comparable enough that, dude, they are so secure in their jobs right now. They are not getting fired anytime soon with how good they're doing right now. You go to Texas A&M, you restart the clock, man. You know, they don't care how good you did at your last school. It's how good you're doing right now. So those are 2 names that I've seen thrown around a lot too, and I agree with you. Those are 2 I just think they wouldn't even look at it. I don't care how much money they offer them. I don't think they should even look at that job.
I have one that makes a lot of sense to me.
So
I have a wild card, but I have one that makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm going to go with that one first. I think Mike Elko makes a ton of sense.
Dude,
I think he knows the place. He was already there as a defensive coordinator. You see what he's done at Duke, and again, I think the problem at A&M is execution. You can see right now, despite being at Duke, a decidedly basketball school, Mike Elko and that program executes at a wicked high level.
Yeah.
Even this past week against North Carolina, they had, with a 3rd-string quarterback, they had no business being in that game, and they took him to double overtime. They took Drake May to double overtime on the road, could have won the game. Came back from double-digit deficits twice. I think Mike Elko and the familiarity, I think that makes a ton of sense. Can I tell you? Do I know for a fact he's going to win a national title? No, but
he's a good coach. You need a good coach.
I think at A&M, I don't understand why the expectation is, hey, we should be winning national titles. Now, if they want to do that, now I'm going to throw my wild card at you. All right? I'm going to give you one where things haven't been going great lately, but we do know there's a coach on this level. If I'm A&M and I'm a little crazy, which I am, I would call about Dabo Swinney.
Ooh.
I would go that same route again. Clearly, there's friction between Swinney and Clemson and everything going Tyler from Spartanburg and all that, right? Clearly, we've got a downslope and kind of a, Cade Klubnik's not really replaced Trevor Lawrence like that, and their defense is still great, but they're trying to find it, and he's been there for so long. Maybe it's just a thing where it's stale. I might think about, and I know Lanning's been talked about. I know Kalen DeBoer's been talked. I might think about, if you have national title, okay. I'm Texas A&M, and I have boatloads I have $75 million to waste and another to pay somebody else. Maybe it's Dabo.
Oh, I don't like that though. I think that you're just falling into the same trap.
I don't think they'll do it because it's the ACC. I don't think they probably just won't go back to the ACC for another one.
Yeah,
but I would make the call if my expectations are that high. Otherwise, I'm going for more of a fit and more of a guy who knows how to execute, like Mike Elko or even like Matt Campbell, something like that.
The Dabo thing though is because Jimbo in his last year at Florida State went 5-6 before he left. I just feel like the Dabo is like he's on a similar downswing. I just don't know if you want to, and also like he's got the Jimbo thing where it's like he's not updating ever. He's not changing his ways. I just don't know if A&M should go after a coach like that who's just so stuck in his ways that I don't know.
So I think with Dabo, it's been the most of the complaining's been about the portal, right? And not using the portal. I don't know the extent that A&M and Jimbo's been using it either, but. If you're just talking about elite recruiting, Dabo's still an elite recruiter, and he's got all these resources. And if they're just going to buy players anyway, finding talent's not going to be an issue.
Dabo's really against NIL, though. That's the thing. Will he be willing? Will he be willing?
That might be a rift in it. I just think in a football sense and in like expectation, national title sense, I would at least make that phone call.
I get it. One name I want to throw out there too that I don't think I've seen a lot actually, but I'm surprised he hasn't been getting more traction. He considered the Auburn job last year. If he considered that job, he is taking this job, or at least very highly considering it. Lane Kiffin. I think Lane Kiffin would very much consider this job at Texas A&M. I think it's a better job than Ole Miss. Auburn was comparable. I think this is a way better job than Auburn. I think this is a job that Lane Kiffin would really listen at and look at. So I think Lane Kiffin would be a good hire for them. I think Mike Elko, again, would be a great hire as well. Lance Leipold, I think, from Kansas. This might be the job to finally lure him away from Kansas. He would be fantastic. Willie Fritz from Tulane's done really well. Jonathan Smith from Oregon State, especially Jonathan Smith, man. After this year, he's stuck. He doesn't have a Power 5 conference to lean on after this year. He might want to get out of there after this year at Oregon State. So out of those names, who ultimately would you try to really go after and think that they really have a chance at getting, though?
I think now the money's the X factor here, but for me the fit, I would go get Elko from Duke.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think they need to cool it on this immediate national title expectation thing. I think they need somebody who can build a program. He knows the program inside and out already. You see what he's done at Duke, and I know they're not going to win the ACC, and they've had injuries, and their offense is, a bit of a struggle, but they execute at such a high level. And I think somebody with a prior understanding, as opposed to just throwing money at the name at Lanning or DeBoer or whoever. I think Elko and the connections. I think that would be a big deal. This is a team and a program that needs to execute at a higher level.
So DeBoer's an interesting one too. DeBoer, I feel like the Oregon and Florida State jobs are at least comparable. The Washington job, I think, is, even though they have a great year, don't get me wrong, I still think that's Texas A&M's a significantly better job. Do you think DeBoer would really consider A&M overall, or do you think he's kind of a guy too? He's going to the Big Ten, obviously. He's got a great, last 2 years. Do you think he's one of that, like Lanning and like North Valley? He's like, I'm kind of good where I am right now, man.
I think the one thing that would make me consider it if I'm DeBoer, other than $80 million, is I think Washington's got a lot of talent leaving.
Right.
They've got a lot of talent leaving that program. They're going to be in for a little more of a reset than Oregon is. Oregon's going to lose Nix, obviously, but I think in that system and the way they do things, they can. Not that Nix is like, you're going to get the next Bo Nix, but Oregon always at least has good quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Washington's got a boatload of talent leaving, Penix and all the receivers. If there was a time where if DeBoer did go, it would make some sense to me. I would understand it, and then Washington, you might see some struggle in the Big Ten from there.
Yeah, so that's one. Can I throw out one more name that I think is lunacy that people keep throwing out, but people keep throwing it out anyways? Do you know who I'm talking about?
I know what you're gonna say.
Dan Campbell. Can you
wait? What?
Dan Campbell? Have you heard that or no?
Oh no, not that. Oh, I thought you were gonna say Dion.
Oh, dude, Dion, no, absolutely not. That'd be awful.
Okay.
That would be terrible.
No, Dan Campbell's not going anywhere. He's trying to win a Super Bowl. He's got a top 6 team. He's got a top 6 team in the NFL.
That's what I've heard that. So many insiders have thrown that name out because he played for Texas A&M in the past. And yes, he would get more money at Texas A&M than he would in the NFL, but it's like, when was the last successful NFL coach that left for a college job? I mean, Nick Saban, I don't think was successful, right? When he was in Miami, like he wasn't really, he was fine, but like when he left for Alabama, like I don't think he was that successful. Jim Harbaugh,
they weren't.
Jim Harbaugh didn't he get fired by San Francisco, right? I believe. When he left for Michigan, I believe.
I don't remember how that went down, but it was a downslide after a really, really darn good couple of years.
Yeah, it's like, dude, Dan Campbell's 7-2 right now. Like, what are we talking about right now, man?
No, he's not going anywhere. He's so invested. It's like, no, that's just nonsense. I can't even.
That would be insane.
They legit. They're like not that far from like they could go to the Super Bowl this year.
I agree. All right, I'm glad we're on the same page with that because I've seen that one, and yeah, I get he played for Texas A&M and all that, but they would offer him more money than the Lions are offering him. But at the same time, it's like, dude,
the amount of legend you would be if you won a Super Bowl with the Lions,
dude, they've given the keys to the city. Oh my God, yeah, and
there's no way.
There's no way. That's and the Dion one. I think I saw Stephen A. Smith and even Dan Orlovsky on ESPN say it should be Dion, and like, dude,
no.
Let's wait it out. Let's see how this goes. He just lost 6 straight or something like that. He's lost 5 of the last.
Well, I think to me more so. Here's another one. You want an easier path to the playoff? Go to the Big 12.
Yeah.
Without Texas and Oklahoma, take Shedeur to the Big 12. I'm still in on this. One good offseason. Get some linemen in there like he's been talking about. Obviously, get your defense a little better. They could win the Big 12 next year.
They could. I think Utah is also going to be up there with Cam Rising going back, too. It's for his 7th season of college football. So, absolutely. Those are some names that we kind of want to throw out there as for our candidates for Texas A&M. We're going to talk about this job a lot more in the coming weeks because we're going to do an episode, hopefully, about all of the Power 5 openings and talking about who should fit those. Speaking of that, though, Dalton, this is not the only Power 5 opening open right now because Mississippi State just fired Zach Arnett after less than 1 season. He had a 5-6 record, obviously taking over for the legendary Mike Leach. After he passed away, he was Leach's defensive coordinator. Kind of fired all of Leach's staff after he took over, which was really weird and obviously didn't really work out too well. So Zach Arnett fired now at Mississippi State. Obviously not as nearly as good of a job as Texas A&M, but still an SEC job that just opened up over the weekend, though.
Yeah, and if it was me, I think I would be looking to reset this offense and try to get it back to where it was, somewhat with Leach. I don't know. It wouldn't be a pure air raid, but they need to start scoring points again. I just look at their team this year and they just can't score. I've seen several Mississippi State games. They just look so out of sync. It's so different. The offense is so different from what it was under Leach that, Will Rogers has looked just wholly uncomfortable. Defensively, they still play physical football. With decent run, but this passing game has got to come back. Look, especially at a school like this, you've got to be prime time in the passing game. You really do. You see it at Missouri right now, and that's actually maybe the first name I would look at. And we've talked about him a lot this year. Mm-hmm. I would call Kirby Moore and go, what is it going to take, man? I know he's young, and I know he's only been at Missouri out of Fresno for 1 year, but he did great work at Fresno State. He's done unreal. I would, you and me both, we would pick him for probably the Broyles Award this year. Yeah. Considering the improvement, they're a top 10 team. That's legit. I would call Kirby Moore, or I would call Rhett Lashley from SMU and just catalyze this offense. They have to find something offensively.
Absolutely. Another guy I want to throw out there, Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator for Washington. He is a guy that Alabama tried to poach this offseason. He decided to stay with Kalen DeBoer. He might, this might be a job for him to take over. I know Will Stein, he's only been 1 year as Oregon's offensive coordinator, but what he's done there is incredible. Dan Mullen, man. Dan Mullen was there for about 8 or 9 years at Mississippi State before getting the Florida job, and then obviously after Florida, he's been in studio now. But Dan Mullen's an interesting name. He did a good job at Florida. I would throw out there. He did a good job at Florida. I would not hate going for the Dan Mullen experience again.
They canned him on one bad year at Florida. I don't know how really fair that was, and he did a terrific job at Mississippi State.
And look what Napier's doing. Look, Napier's struggling in his replacement, man. So yeah.
Oh, it's rough over there right now. That might be another one we're talking about soon. But the only thing with Mullen is he looks so satisfied. Doesn't he look so happy on TV now? He just looks so much less stressed out. He doesn't he almost looks. Now I could be wrong. But he almost looks like he has no inclination to come back. Yeah. That. Now, again, you wouldn't get $80 million out of Mississippi State, but you'd get some chunk. Any of those options, any of them. They're all the same to me, where it's about re-jump starting this offense.
Yep.
It's any of those options makes sense to me. I just think that's the overarching theme. They need to start scoring points again. Defensively, look, they're getting guys in the NFL. They've got good defensive players, good defensive talent, and that's a credit to Arnett. But when you can't score, it really doesn't matter.
No, and one other name I want to throw out there, Willie Fritz, the Tulane head coach. I feel like he's going to get a lot of offers. I think this might be a job. I don't know if A&M, he's like one of the last guys I would look at for A&M if you really struck out on everyone else. But Mississippi State, this is probably one of the top guys I'd look at in terms of getting him to run this program. Before we move on to some of the other head coach openings, I wanted to really quickly mention this guy and see your thoughts on him. I've seen a lot of Urban Meyer talk for Texas A&M. Do you have any thoughts on that? I agree. I would not.
That's another guy who looks a lot less stressed out on me.
And we know every single time he's been a coach, it hasn't really worked out well in the end. So, yeah, I agree with you. Zach Arnett, though, maybe USC defensive coordinator. could be a potential candidate.
That's not a bad call. That's not a bad call right there.
So we'll see. That could be.
That makes some sense.
That would make a lot of sense. So Zach Arnett, really less than 1 year, unfortunate for him. But it never seemed like they were very committed to him. It just seemed like, obviously after Leach's unfortunate passing, they kind of just promoted him, and then, it just didn't really work out too well. And it never seemed like they were very committed. They always it felt like they had their eye on someone else this whole time. So we'll see what they do. A couple more really quickly we can go over. Boise State fired their coach, Andy Avalos, and then also Brady Hoke, San Diego State's head coach, announced that he's retiring after this season. So here are the current head coach openings. We'll talk about Texas A&M, Michigan State, obviously after firing Mel Tucker, Mississippi State, who we just talked about after firing Zach Arnett, Northwestern after they fired Pat Fitzgerald after the whole scandal there, Boise State just fired Andy Avalos, like I mentioned, and then San Diego State, Brady Hoke is retiring after this year. So do you have any thoughts on the Boise State and San Diego State openings that just happened over the weekend too?
San Diego State, I think they're going to stay on the West Coast with that one, and they've got a very big defensive tradition. I've heard DeAnton Lynn is one from UCLA's defensive coordinator. It's just a good fit. San Diego's kind of created this reputation as the defensive monster of the Mountain West. This year the offense bottomed out. Last couple of years, they had a lot of success defense and punting the ball and winning games 13-10. I have a fun one with Boise State, though, and it's going to make sense once I say it. The last couple of years I've watched Boise State, they still got hogs up front. They play great defense. They're wicked physical, and going to Boise is still not fun. Now, they don't score like they used to, right, with Chris Peterson and all that. And I was thinking first about names like Kirby Moore, first-time guys. Kirby Moore, Ben Arbuckle, Jason Candle from Toledo is another one I thought about. And then something like a light bulb clicked, and I went, oh, no, it's obvious, especially since there's a decent chance this guy could be free after. Go get Kellen Moore. Go get Kellen Moore, because we don't know necessarily what's happening with that Chargers situation. But the way it's trending is not great. And I know Moore, he's in his first year, and it could be his first and last year with the Chargers just because of the situation. I would go get Old Glory. I would go get Kellen Moore and make him the head coach. I need a jump start on offense, and it's something really familiar. I would even, you know what? Even if Brandon Staley and all that, if they stay for another year with the chart, I would still make the call. I would see if Kellen Moore wants to be the head coach of this team.
Dude, that is fantastic. That's a fantastic call. That would be awesome to see Kellen Moore, one of the most legendary. I think he's second all time, or maybe even leading all time in wins at Boise State.
50 or 52 wins.
It's something him and
like
Colt McCoy, I know, is right there too. So yeah, he is. Dude, that would be incredible if they get Kellen Moore, and I'm sure every Boise State fan would sign up for that as well. I mean, he'd be a hero. I mean, how cool would that be to see Kellen Moore be the head coach there? So, those are some interesting jobs. Also, Boise State and San Diego State, both in the Mountain West, both might be the new kind of Pac-12 conference too. We'll see what happens to Oregon State and Washington State, obviously, in the coming months. But another real quick firing that we have to get to because it's my team, and also is a pretty big coordinator going down. Mike Yurcich finally getting the boot from Penn State after again, anemic offensive performance against Michigan this past Saturday. What were your thoughts, Dalton, on Penn State's offensive performance, not only in the Michigan game, but the Ohio State game? Because I think it's the same issue both times, honestly. And then ultimately, what do you think about this move for Penn State?
This isn't surprising. We mentioned it, and it's weird because you look at the raw stats, and they're scoring close to 40 a game, and it's just not. You can tell there's just no identity, right? It's like, are we a running team? Are we a Drew Aller team? We're kind of short on receivers, but we need Aller to succeed. It looks like same old Penn State. Well, you know better than anybody. I think they need someone who's going to make this a Drew Aller. They need this to be quarterback driven. They have to get out of Drew Aller. He's not Trace McSorley. He's not Sean Clifford. And I would, if they don't make the right hire here, I would be very afraid of Drew Aller leaving.
Yep.
I think there are schools.
Yep.
Like, especially Oregon, even with their quarterbacks leaving, like Washington, like Oregon, like Florida. There are plenty of schools who would gladly take Drew Aller as their quarterback. No question. Like Florida State, if Jordan Travis leaves, I'm telling you, they need to get this. They need to get this right and center this offense around Aller, because if they don't, it's going to be more of same old Penn State, and he's too good for that.
He's too good.
I'm sorry. The last couple weeks before this game, they unleashed him, and that's when he looked his best. They need to develop him into their best player, and it's got to be a coach who is going to run like a quarterback-centric offense as they just don't have an identity right now offensively.
No, they don't. And yeah, I think that's a great point, because another point that I want to make is that Drew Aller, one of the biggest reasons why he committed to Penn State in the first place was Mike Yurcich. So now you fire the guy who he loved and obviously didn't work out. And I think it was the right move for Penn State. Don't get me wrong. But I think it could be a little rocky, especially Drew Aller. I mean, with all the quarterbacks leaving, even though he's been disappointing for some people, I would still say Drew Aller is a top 3 to 5 quarterback in the country heading into next season, probably. So if you add him in the transfer portal for anyone else, if he does enter the transfer portal, which I don't think he will, but man, that's a huge addition if he does enter the transfer portal. I think if he does enter, he'd be the best quarterback in the portal, definitely, in my opinion. I mean, he could still be a first-round pick when it's all said and done in next year's draft. I think so many people who blamed Drew Aller for that game against Michigan, blamed him for the game against Ohio State, just don't know what they're talking about, man. I mean, this is the receivers for Penn State, first of all. This is the worst group of receivers I can remember at Penn State. Second of all, the play calling was atrocious, which is why Yurcich is finally getting the boot. But Aller right now has a 7.7 yard average depth of target. That is 132nd among FBS quarterbacks. This guy is one of the biggest arms in the country, and you're not using it. It feels like the Hackenberg days, and I think he's better than Hackenberg, but Hackenberg, it was not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and it feels like that too. And it feels like the Justin Herbert at Oregon, whereas like Herbert was so much better than what Oregon allowed him to be, and of course now you see what he's doing now in the NFL. It feels like that for Drew Aller right now. So I agree with you. They have to find a coordinator, and not only that, Franklin needs to find a coordinator and then stay out of the offense, because every time he hires a new coordinator, it's the same issues on offense. And I feel like he has his hands too much in the offense right now. I think he's just got to hire someone and just be like, listen, I'll be the CEO. You handle the offense. I'll get the players in and all that, and I'll handle the game management, which he's not good at either. But I think that he needs to hire someone. So we mentioned this guy before. I don't know if he would take this job, but because he might get some head coach offers. Kirby Moore, I would love to see at Penn State. Sean Lewis from Colorado, that's kind of going south in Colorado, but I think he'd be a terrific hire for Penn State as their offensive coordinator. He kind of let Shador do his thing at Colorado. Hopefully he could do the same thing for Drew Aller. So those are a couple of names I like. But, yeah, man, I feel like this is a move that needed to happen. But now this is maybe a job-defining hire for James Franklin now, because a lot of Penn State fans are getting very restless. I'm not in the boat yet where I want to fire him, because I don't think he deserves to be fired just by losing to 2 top 5 teams in the country every year. But if he needs to make a splash hire, man, and a really good one in order to keep his job for the foreseeable future, though.
I think Kirby Moore makes some sense. I think the big thing with Aller is he's not a West Coast passer. He's a vertical passer. And I see everything. Yeah. It feels like every pass he throws a 5-yard out. And that's just not – it's not taking advantage. His arm talent's as good as anybody in the country, right? But I think – and actually you mentioned Sean Lewis. I think if they don't go with Kellen Moore, I actually think Sean Lewis would be a good name for the Boise State job too. Mm-hmm. But you wonder, you mentioned maybe he needs somebody he trusts. Maybe it's Joe Moorhead. Maybe it's going back to Joe Moorhead before he left for Mississippi State. They had it kind of rolling for a bit. He clearly trusts him. He's a head coach at Akron right now, so I'm sure he would take the Penn State OC job over where he's at. That's just a difficult place to be. Another name I saw getting thrown out there, if we're going out of the college ranks, maybe Joe Brady. Bills quarterback coach Joe Brady, who had Burrow at LSU.
Yep.
If you ever want to develop a guy, and Brady, he was the passing game coordinator for that LSU team, and he's with the Bills right now.
He has a Penn State tie, though. Hold on. I know he has a Penn State tie as well. He was a grad assistant at Penn State. He also went to Penn State as well. So there's some ties there.
Maybe that's what it was, why it was so high on the list, is Joe Brady, look, clearly he knows quarterbacks. He knows quarterbacks. He was with Drew Brees and the Saints. Mm-hmm. He was with Joe Burrow at LSU. He's with Josh Allen now. It's the type of thing you need. Somebody who will run a quarterback-centric offense that's going to develop Aller into the superstar that his talent says he should be. I think any of those names, Kirby Moore included, I think that makes a lot of sense. They need to get vertical. They need to convince kids, these recruits, that they're going to get vertical. because throwing 5-yard outs all day will not get you any receivers on the trail. Absolutely not. So one of these guys that can that to me as I look at Drew, because if you don't make the Drew Aller the centerpiece next year, he will leave. This is how it works now. He will go, and he will go somewhere. If Drew Aller left right now, I guarantee you Washington would be kicking down his door to get him to replace Penix. Guarantee it.
Anyone will. I think anyone who's losing a quarterback this year probably would kick down his door and try to get him as well. So, I mean, dude, USC. I mean, USC might do it. USC might be like Lincoln Riley.
Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan. Yeah,
yeah.
That would be God, that would suck if he goes from Penn State to Michigan. But yeah, I think Lincoln Riley too would be like, dude, I would take you in here. Now I know they have a 5-star backup right now, and Malachi Nelson's a true freshman, but at the same time, it's like, dude, Drew Aller, like I said, I think Drew Aller is a top 5 quarterback in the country heading into next season. Well, with everyone leaving right now, so yeah, I think anyone would be loving to get Drew Aller on their team. Last bit of news is kind of a sad one that we're talking about now. Like, losing job is not sad. It definitely is. And I do feel for these coaches because, you look at these coaches and you say, oh, they deserve to be fired and all that. They're also uprooting their lives, man. They're moving their families out of places. Like, that sucks. That really does suck. So definitely feel for these coaches, and also definitely feel for Jonathan Brooks, who tore his ACL in the game against TCU this past weekend, the star running back for Texas. Just a brutal blow, not only to Jonathan Brooks, brutal blow to Texas, and then brutal blow to Jonathan Brooks' NFL draft status, because he was the number 1 running back on our big board before this injury. We'll see what happens now. He won't be able to participate in the combine if he does enter the draft. But yeah, just all around, man, it's a really massive blow to the Longhorns.
Yeah, it's terrible. He's their best player, at least offensively. I know they have the receivers. They've got a good group of receivers, but this guy's the engine, and if you actually wanted for me, and I know their defense has played really well, and Ewers has been hot and cold. This guy's the number 1 reason Texas is where they are.
Yeah.
There have been, especially in the games with Murphy playing quarterback, Brooks is the reason. He's still the reason they finished games. I know he had the fumble against Kansas State, but he's just spectacular. He was probably, if not probably, he was on the inside track to a Doak Walker. He's the engine to this offense, and this is more devastating than Ewers getting hurt. To be honest with you, this is that Texas. At the end of the day, you look back at this season and you go, the reasons Texas is really good is because they run and they stop the run. It's kind of classic, right? Passing game flashes. Obviously, it was great against Bama. The secondary comes and goes, but they run and they stop the run. Jonathan Brooks, T'Vondre Sweat. Those 2 guys are the heart and soul of this team, and you just lost the offensive half of that. Yeah. I would be, and I believe we're going to preview it on Wednesday. I would be a little worried about what this offense looks like. Now, CJ Baxter has been great.
Yep.
That's the good news, is you do have a very viable replacement. But I think part of the appeal to this running game too was that you had both of them, and somebody was always fresh, and they got a bunch of carries. I don't doubt Baxter's ability to do so, but we haven't seen him be the lead dog like that without Brooks.
Yeah,
and you wonder if that's going to happen, because this is the centerpiece of their offense. He had the go-ahead touchdown against Oklahoma, not Ewers in the passing game. It's this guy. So this is a hard one. This is a really, really hard one, and they have to find. They're lucky Ewers is back now, because had they both been out, I'm not sure how they would have scored points.
No, exactly. Oh my God, that would be disastrous if they both were out. But yeah, it's they get their starting quarterback back, but like you said, they lose their top offensive player in Jonathan Brooks, who was having, like you said, one of the best seasons by any running back in the country this year. Just even more impressive that this guy was number 3 on the depth chart last year behind Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. You think, okay, they lose those 2 guys, both of them doing well in their rookie years in the NFL when they're allowed to touch the ball. Shout out Arthur Smith for that. But Jonathan Brooks, man, you're like, okay, they're gonna take a step back now after those 2 running backs leave. He's been fantastic, and we'll see with CJ Baxter, who is now the new running back 1 for them. He also was the number 1 running back recruit coming out of high school. And he's a true freshman this year, so we'll see what the kid's got. But it is a brutal blow for the Longhorns. Now it's just more pressure on Quinn Ewers, man, who didn't look great against TCU, and obviously that game went down on the wire. A lot more pressure on Quinn Ewers, and they're kind of fighting for their playoff lives right now. They need to be kind of making statements to the committee with like blowout victories, just squeaking by TCU and squeaking by Iowa State maybe this weekend. Man, I don't know. I feel like Texas, at the end of the day, if Alabama beats Georgia and Oregon beats Washington or whatever, I think Texas might be the odd man out in the college football playoff if we have an undefeated Big Ten and Florida State. I think Texas is kind of the odd man out right now. So massive blow to the Longhorns. But the next thing we're talking about is, speaking of Heisman chances, Jayden Daniels, man, what he did against Florida was one of the greatest things I've ever seen a quarterback do, man. He had over 600 yards of total offense in that game. So I know, Dalton, we talked about it before, and we made this take before, and I look stupid now because we both said I think the winner of the Pac-12 championship game will ultimately win the Heisman Trophy, the winning quarterback. I'm at the point where I think Jayden Daniels is your Heisman Trophy winner. I'm at that point now. I don't care how many losses he has. I'm at that point. What do you think about that?
Oh, he's making it awfully hard, isn't he? On the narrative, awfully hard. When you have 600 total yards and I found his 96.1 grade for the game is the second best by any quarterback this year, and the one that was better was Tyler Van Dyke against Bethune-Cookman. So I'm not even really going to count it. That was as good a game as I've seen in a while, both ways. Earlier in the year, I compared him to Jalen Hurts a bit, and I think there's something there. I think there's another jump that's just been made from that, because obviously the Hurts comparison was dual threat, didn't turn the ball over, and just is really darn hard to beat. He went from Jalen Hurts to Lamar Jackson.
Oh, I knew you were going to say it. I knew you were going to say it.
He did. I came out. Look, first of all, the Heisman thing. Okay, first in overall grade, first in passing grade. Third in passing yards behind Penix and Caleb Williams. First in rushing grade. First in rush yards by a quarterback. By far. He's got, if you take the sacks out of it and the way the NCAA keeps track of all that nonsense, he's got 1,028 yards on 97 carries. Okay, and I'm just going to throw this in there next to Penix and Bo Nix. Bo Nix, by that same token, has 139 rushing yards, and Michael Penix has 17. Jayden Daniels, by the numbers, honestly, is the best offensive player in the country.
Not even close.
That's not. It's not. It's actually not even close. And I'm going to be honest with you. More than before I looked at these numbers for this show. Look, he's got. Throw one more in there too. 32 explosive runs, 10 yards or more. There's only 7 running backs in the country with more than that. And he's good for a 10-yard run a third of the time. That's nuts. No, I came out of this Florida game, and I had a bad feeling for Florida that this is the way it was going to go with the way their defense. Jayden Daniels has to be a first-round pick. There's not a question. This is not a question. Jalen Hurts back in the day was a debate. Where does this guy go? The throwing motion,
the Oklahoma offense.
Yeah. No, this is not an argument to me. I think you could argue him. I think you could argue. Lately, I think we've both been in the boat where Penix is probably the third quarterback in this draft, right?
Probably.
Williams and Drake May is still leading the country in big time throws. He's still way up.
Yeah,
there.
those are 1 and 2. I don't think anyone's ever going to touch those two. Yeah.
No, but no, Jayden Daniels. I'm going to be honest with you. If this guy goes to one of these teams in the late teens or a playoff team, let me throw a scenario out there for you. They're going to be in this range. Could you imagine Jayden Daniels on the Minnesota Vikings?
That would be hot.
Jayden Daniels, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson. Have fun.
And then Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw protecting him as well.
And really, really good pass protection and a Brian Flores defense that's gotten a lot better overnight.
Dude.
You think Kirk Cousins and Josh Dobbs are fun? I'm telling you, if they're let's just say they're hovering around that right now. They're in that wild card race, obviously. Let's just say they're hovering around pick number 20, and they're looking for a quarterback. And Trevor Sikkema's got Bo Nix number 6 on his board now, way up there too.
Something like that, yeah.
If I'm a team, if I'm like Minnesota, and Jayden Daniels is sitting there at number 20, let's go.
Yeah,
let's go. I'm not kidding. If he goes to the right team, especially in a dome on turf.
Oh, dude.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I knew he was fast. We all knew he was fast. He's right as shape. That 85-yarder.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was that fast,
dude.
That's Max. That's not football speed. I mentioned this once with Zachariah Branch earlier in the year. No, that's track speed.
Mm-hmm.
That's not funny. That makes me think he's going to go to the combine and run a 4.3.
Dude, he might. Can you imagine?
That's Florida. Florida's no, it's Florida. They got all the athletes. They have all the speed. I don't know if Lamar Jackson ever had an 85-yarder. I don't remember.
Yeah, you have to look back, and those are ACC defenses he's going against too at the same time. So it's like,
Jayden Daniel's a freak, man. He has to be a first round. If he ever went to the Minnesota Vikings,
Kevin O'Connell. We didn't mention Kevin. I love Kevin O'Connell, dude. I think that'd be. I love him.
Oh, his play calling is actually. I know everyone's on Dobbs. No, the play calling is the reason they could make the playoffs. He's one of the best play callers.
Oh man, dude.
If you had that, or I think about what's another team, man. I mean,
let me look at Tankathon right now.
I'm just trying to think like teams that'll be in that 15 to 20 range.
The Raiders are 16 right now.
That's a good one. I even think about like if you're Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And you feel like Kenny Pickett's the weakness. Would you think about? I'll give you a fun one.
What about San Francisco? Were you gonna say that?
I was gonna say Miami.
Wow.
What if you want a fun jolt and you want that speed element at quarterback along with all those other guys?
Can you freaking imagine if they had the read option with Raheem Mostert and A-Chain?
The odds are they won't do it. But if they feel like the quarterback, along with not good pass protection, is the reason they don't make a Super Bowl.
The fastest team
and
ever.
Jayden Daniels is in it. He's going to be really, really hard for some teams to pass out.
Dude.
Pass up. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
He is a freak, an absolute freak. Like what everyone wants Anthony Richardson to be. That's Jayden Daniels. Look, Denver, the Broncos. You don't think Sean Payton would kill to have this guy?
Yeah.
I mean, no, or you know what? Here's another one because it's a short contract. Put him in Seattle.
I don't hate that either. Definitely don't hate that
either. Even if you either give him a year behind Geno or just go, you know what? This guy's a freak. They were thinking about Richardson last year.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there are some teams. Atlanta, look, the Falcons. I would kill to see Jayden and Bijan in the same backfield.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there are some fits here, and you have an athlete this good. He went from Jalen Hurts to Lamar Jackson Jayden Daniels. I'm going to scream this for the next 5 months. He has to be a first round pick.
Yeah.
If this guy drops to round 2 and some team gets him in the second round, I'm going to throw something.
Dude,
honestly, if I was I don't know, a team like the Jets or somebody, if he ever fell to round 2, well, they don't have a second round pick. Yeah. Let me have this guy.
Mm-hmm.
That 85. He does things you don't teach, and you have to look at those guys.
So, would you say he is your Heisman frontrunner right now? I think he is.
It's hard not to. This is so many. Every number says he's the best player in the country.
Yeah, except for the wins and losses.
It's the dual threat thing for me. He has 1,000 rushing yards.
Yeah, the only thing it doesn't is wins. If he didn't have the wins and losses, it's the only thing. But
that's not
on him. Exactly. It's like it's on his. You're faulting him for having a bad defense. It's like that's not his fault. So I agree with you. Also, keep in mind, Lamar Jackson when he won it, they went 9-3 that year. Robert Griffin III when he won it, they went 9-3 that year. LSU goes 9-3. I just think listen, Penix has been amazing. Bo Nix has been amazing. But, man, what Jayden Daniels is doing this year is freaking stupid, dude. It's stupid. By the way, we interviewed Jayden Daniels. If you want to check it out, too. He was an awesome, awesome kid. And I talked about him about the Heisman, and he said how it's always been a dream of his to win the Heisman Trophy. Man, that dream is about to become a reality, Jayden. That dream is about to become a reality because what you're doing this year it's not on Burrow level. Don't get me wrong. Burrow as a passer that year was unbelievable. But just overall.
I think his best chance, I think, is going to be Washington beating Oregon again, right? Because I think Nix and Oregon have a lot of the narrative. Those two guys. Now, Penix is leading the country in passing yards.
Nix is leading the country. Nix is the betting favorite right now. I don't know if you saw that. With Penix second and Daniels third.
If Washington beats Oregon again, they're not going to give it to Nix.
No,
they're not going to do it.
They probably.
I think both of those guys. Well, maybe because Penix lately has been more solid than spectacular.
Yeah.
If he goes into this week more solid, they got a rough game and a rough matchup this week. Obviously, we're getting into that too. Washington, he may have to be great this week. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they'll win this week with solid on the road against that run game and all that. We're going to get into that, but it's the running, it's the equalizer, man. And honestly, it's not even just look. He's third in passing yards behind Penix and Caleb Williams.
Yep.
He could very well finish in the lead for passing yards.
He is third in passing yards. He has the most passing touchdowns. He is first in passer rating, first in yards per attempt, first in big-time throw rate, and then, by the way, he has 160 more rushing yards than the next closest quarterback in the country.
And I think, the case for me, if they were 9-1, just happenstance instead of 7-3, if they had beaten Ole Miss, because there was some play calling at the end there that just didn't serve him right.
And he scored 52 points,
If they had beaten Ole Miss and week one, it's like this is the thing. These losses, like the week one loss, is so long ago. That wasn't even the same guy.
Yeah.
I don't.
Also, the Alabama game, dude. Before he got hurt, he was carving up Alabama. That's Alabama we're talking about.
When you and me are both in the boat, they're the best secondary in the country,
right?
And they didn't have an answer. No, there is no. This is a national championship level offense.
Yep.
Because of this guy to start with. No, if they even had an average defense, they would probably be 9-1 right now, if not 10-0. That's not on Daniels. He's doing everything. He's doing everything possible. The numbers, honestly, tell you it should be him.
It's not. And
that's the best way I can put that. And I just think, again, it's this thing. Wins are not fully a quarterback stat. Like,
exactly.
It's just. I would love to see the numbers he puts up the next 2 weeks just to try to.
Oh, dude, Brian Kelly's gonna go all out with. I can't wait for it. He's gonna put up stupid numbers. But listen, man, the Heisman Trophy is by definition given to the most outstanding player in college football. This has been, in my opinion, by far the most outstanding player in college football. I can't believe what this guy is doing right now. I don't give a damn how many games they can go 7-5. If he keeps putting numbers up like this, man, I don't care how many losses they have. He is the best player in college football right now.
He's Lamar Jackson, and he's a better passer than Lamar was.
Yeah, and again, dude, it's like Lamar 9-3, RG3 9-3, Jayden Daniel's 9-3, like that. There's precedent before. It's not just a playoff team. There's precedent before for this happening. I think it should happen this year again. So it sounds weird when we were saying how it's between Penix and Nix, and honestly, it still might be. I don't know if the voters will actually give it to Jayden Daniels, even though he deserves it. But I think we need to be at the forefront, man, of starting that narrative of, listen, this is the best player in college football. This is your Heisman Trophy winner right now. So Jayden Daniels, Heisman, love it. All right, now we got to get to our New Year's 6 projections. We did a lot of reaction to what's been an insane weekend of college football. Not even talking about the games, just a lot of stories that came out of it. But now, based off a lot of the games that we saw, we're going to get into our New Year's 6 bowl projections, which are obviously the biggest bowl games. 2 of the New Year's 6 bowl games are college football playoff semifinals. So we'll get into who we think will be in them. Not right now. Who we think ultimately, at the end of the season, will be in them. So I'll start with you, Dalton. You want to go through your 6 New Year's 6 bowls?
Yeah, sure can. You've got, for me, I mean, the 2 shakeups at the top for me that I've got Ohio State beating Michigan. I can't say I know yet exactly why or how it's going to happen, but there's a hunch. You see Ryan Day right there. And it feels like the Ryan Day just revenge tour. Ever since that speech after the Notre Dame game, I'm like, you know what, man? Maybe they're just going to grind their way in a different way than they usually do all the way with this thing. So I'm going to go with that mostly on gut feeling. And until Oregon gets over the mental hurdle of beating Washington, I'm going to leave them. I'm going to leave them in the Final Four. I'm going to leave Washington in the Final Four until I see it. I think Oregon. I know what they've done is impressive. They beat USC by the same margin Washington did. The only difference between them is Washington beat Oregon, and Oregon. They beat up Utah, whereas Washington played a tight first half with them. I mean, but if we're going on who beat Utah, Washington still beat Oregon head-to-head. Until I see Oregon beat Washington, I'm going to leave Washington in there. All right? Then I've got Texas, and I've got Michigan. Michigan, the best team that would miss. Texas in the Cotton Bowl makes a ton of sense. I believe. I think you have Texas and Ohio State here the other way around. But
right, yeah.
It just, Texas in the Cotton Bowl, and I wonder what they'll have left without Brooks when you get there. Peach Bowl, you've got our favorite team of the year, Missouri, against Penn State, who is still going to end up ranked 9th or 10th in the country with the 2 big losses and beating everybody else. Louisville as the leftover in the ACC with the Orange Bowl after Florida State presumably beats them, although I don't think it'll be as easy as people think, against Alabama. And then Oregon losing to Washington, ending up in the Fiesta Bowl. And an interesting one I'm taking, just maybe to get the narrative out there, I don't know if they'd actually do it with 2 losses, but SMU as the group of 5 team for me. They've been absolutely dominant in the American. In 6 games in conference, they're outscoring their opponents 270-88. Okay, they are blasting everyone on the way, and their 2 losses are at Oklahoma by 17 and at TCU by 17. I'm not going to take anything from them for the Oklahoma loss. The TCU loss is the argument, because TCU is not a great football team, but it's at TCU early in the year. I'd have to look into the circumstances of that. But in American play, they have just blasted everybody. Now, there's a projection thing here, right? Because they're playing at Memphis this week. Big game. Probably the lowest key big game of this week. You've got SMU at Memphis. If they go into Memphis, who is a very good team, and they beat them the same way they've been beating everybody else, I think they need to get ranked, even with 2 losses. I really do. And then they have, I believe, Navy next week. Probably beat them. And then you presumably, really what you're going to get is either Tulane and UTSA play next week, and the winner will also make the American title game. If they beat Memphis, like they've been beating everybody else, and then let's just say they get to play Tulane. And Tulane right now is number 23, maybe move up a couple spots before then. And Tulane has their 1 loss to Ole Miss with a backup quarterback. And SMU beats Tulane to win the conference, because Tulane's been playing tight lately. They've been playing some tight games. It's not been dominant like that. They just beat East Carolina 13-10. That's rough. I think SMU could run this thing. This week's big. If they can make this big statement against Memphis, I really think they have a shot. And I think they have a very good shot to beat Tulane, win the American, get themselves into the top 25, and then I know the argument will be what you have coming next, along with another one with some NCAA rules. But I think SMU, I think it needs to be taken notice how dominant they've been in that conference.
Dude, we talked about it over text, but that first half against Tulsa was maybe the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, man. 52-3 was the score at halftime of that game. Tulsa, by the way, was 3-5. It's not like they were like 0-8 going into that. They were 3-5. They were fine, below average. You were losing by 49 at halftime. That is insane. So yeah, SMU, I love that call out. I do think they're a sleeper right now that not a lot of people are talking about, so I do love that call out. My New Year's 6 bowls. So the Sugar Bowl, which is the college football playoff semifinal, I got Georgia against Oregon. So I actually have Oregon, beating Washington in the rematch in the Pac-12 championship game, which will ultimately, I think, be a playoff game, basically. Rose Bowl, I have Michigan against Florida State. So I have Michigan beating Ohio State, unlike you. And I have Florida State in that one as well. Also, for people wondering why the Sugar Bowl and Rose Bowl are those, the number 1 team in the country, who I think we're both going to say is Georgia, at the end of it all, they get to pick which bowl game they play in. And obviously, if you have Georgia against Oregon or Georgia against Washington and Oregon would obviously very much like to play in the Rose Bowl with how close they are to it. Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, they'd much rather play there, man. It's much closer to home. So they would pick that as their game that they want to play in. So that's why we have it there. Cotton Bowl, I have Texas against Ohio State. I think it makes a lot of sense. Texas playing in the Cotton Bowl, probably against the loser of Ohio State, Michigan. Peach Bowl, I have the same exact thing as you. Missouri against Penn State. I think Ole Miss could really make a push for that. It'll be interesting to see between the two. But I think Missouri, man, they lost by 9 to Georgia. And Georgia just absolutely destroyed Ole Miss this past Saturday. So I think that might be the difference for a lot of voters, but that'll be a really interesting matchup between Missouri and Ole Miss as to who gets that final New Year's 6 spot out of the SEC. Orange Bowl, I got Louisville against Alabama, which I believe was the same as you for that. So yeah. I think that'll That's one, Orange Bowl always has an ACC team. That'll probably be Louisville this year, unless they lose to Miami, which we'll preview on Wednesday. Then maybe North Carolina has a chance at making that Orange Bowl. But right now, I would think it's going to be Louisville against Alabama. And then finally, Fiesta Bowl, Washington, I think against Liberty. I think Liberty, right now, they're 10-0. I understand they're playing in a much weaker conference than the American Athletic Conference. But I think if you have a 12-0, 13-0, ultimately Liberty, and you have a 2-loss American champion, I have trouble. I understand that maybe the strength of schedule is better, but I'd have trouble leaving out a 13-0 Group of 5 champion when all you have left is a 2-loss Group of 5 champion. The other one I want to shout out, it's BS. They're not even allowed to, but we mentioned this before. James Madison should be the clear favorite for this right now. What they've done in the Sun Belt, they've beaten some good teams, and they're destroying some good teams as well. Troy is really good. James Madison right now ineligible to participate in the postseason, meaning they can't even play in the Sun Belt championship game, let alone a bowl game. Hopefully they get changed. Maybe they get a waiver in the next couple weeks, but it doesn't look likely right now. But I think both you and I would agree that James Madison would be our team for the Group of 5 at least to make the New Year's Six Bowl. But yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, I agree with James Madison. And the only loophole I know there is right now, I believe they're allowed to play in a bowl game if there are not enough teams that are 6-6 to make it, which then they'll just go and they'll just demolish somebody probably. But no, I think Liberty, the strength of schedule, I'd have to look at like the power rankings and stuff of who they've played. His Conference USA with all those teams leaving this year is rough. Actually, probably the Sun Belt right now is probably better than, well, it definitely is with James Madison and Troy and some of those good teams. Sun Belt's better than Conference USA right now. Conference USA is a little rough, but yeah, the strength of schedule thing bothers me. And look, Jamie Chadwell's doing a great job up there, no question. They're the best team in that conference easily, but I could argue that as the softest conference in the country. And I mean, their last game, they're playing New Mexico State for a second time. So I'm not really sure what I take in them playing a team that they beat by 16 the first time around and playing them again. So I'm not going to take it. Look, I get it, undefeated. And again, you and me both. And look, neither of us picked Tulane here. It could, at the end of the day, just all be a moot point, and Tulane actually just does beat
Tulane is the
UTSA.
Favorite right now, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they just rightfully should be. I just look at the way they're playing, and I'm worried about it.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
But if they beat UTSA next week, I forget, they're playing actually at FAU. They got the alma mater this week. They're at FAU, but FAU can't score. I don't expect it could be an ugly defensive game, but I think Tulane will take care of business there. And then, they're home versus UTSA, and then they play SMU. Those are two really good teams they have to still get through. So. Yeah. Neither one of us went with the current favorite, but we're projecting, so it's a hard one.
Yeah, very hard. Again, James Madison, hopefully can get something done. And even if there's not enough 6-6 teams, I don't think that means they'll get in a Year 6 bowl though. I think that just means they'll get into one of the lower bowl games that they just can't, which sucks, man. Which that'd be such a huge thing for that program, and it just sucks that a BS rule is keeping them from it. But all right, final thing we got to do is trivia. Last week I went 4 for 5. You bounced back. I think you went 2 for 5. Was it?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay,
yeah. So it was 2. Yeah, it was better.
Better than 0 for 5. Better than 0 for 5. So let's see if I can go 5 for 5. Let's see if you can go 5 for 5, and hopefully neither of us go 0 for like a couple weeks ago. But let's get to our first question for trivia from producer Eli back in studio today. Number 1, this player leads the Power 5 with 70 rushes that gained a first down. You got Amarion Hampton, Taj Brooks, Kyle Manangia, and then Bucky Irving from Oregon. Obviously, Bucky Irving is the picture right there. That is interesting. Actually, there are a lot of players that I didn't expect to be on that list. So I'm kind of stuck right now. Who are you looking at?
No, as usual, I'm caught between 2. I'll be honest with you. It's always the thing. I can always get it down to 2. Oh, man.
I think I have an answer.
God, Irving's such like the easy pick.
I don't think
which is what makes me hate it.
I don't think it's him. I don't know if they.
You don't think it's him?
No.
You don't think it's Irving? You don't think it's okay? Then I'm going with Hampton. I was wicked. I'm going to be honest with you. I had the deep dive on the North Carolina game this weekend. Hampton. Drake May's obviously their best player, but Hampton makes their offense go. I'm going with Hampton.
I am actually going to go with Taj Brooks, who I think might be the most underrated player in the country, or one of the most underrated running backs in the country from Texas Tech. He has been carrying that offense this year. I know when I was in Ultimate Perusing a few days ago, I know he was leading. He was at the top 5 in a lot of stats. I'm going to say Taj Brooks is one of the most underrated running backs in the country. I think he's the answer for this one. So Taj Brooks is my final answer. It is Hampton. All right, it is Amarion Hampton. All right,
nailed
it.
it.
Dalton 1 for 1. I'm 0 for 1 right now. Let me write this down.
So impressed with him in this North Carolina game. And Drake May obviously made plays, and he made winning plays. But I'm telling you, Amarion Hampton does not get enough credit for what they're doing down there in North Carolina.
Yeah. Kyle Monangai, I think is how you pronounce it. I completely botched that. But he's a star. Dude, he was awesome in that Rutgers-Ohio State game a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you watched that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, dude. He was keeping them alive in that game. That was unbelievable. If only Nick Singleton or Keyshawn Allen could do that for Penn State a few weeks ago. But I digress. Next question. Question number 2. This quarterback leads the Power 5 with 1,868 passing yards off of play action. You got Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, Dylan Gabriel, and then Caleb Williams. Who leads the Power 5 with the most passing yards off of play action this year? Interesting.
All right, I got it down to 2 again. Ooh, this is a hard one.
So, excuse me. Sorry, it was Dart, Ewers, Caleb, and who was the last one? Dylan Gabriel.
It was one I took out, so I already forgot it.
Dylan Gabriel. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eli. I would say Caleb, dude. I think it's Caleb. Although they do a lot of straight dropbacks, though. I just know he has like the second most passing yards in the country, or third. Or he's second. He's second. I know that. He's second behind Penix. So I don't know.
Oh, because my only thing is I went on the big rant with Dart and play action last week. And I don't know where that might stand now and how that.
I'm gonna go Caleb. Final answer.
I'm gonna go with Jackson Dart.
Okay.
Let me ride with Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin and all that stuff because they take deep shots, man. Even this past week, they got a couple deep shots down the sideline. They just couldn't play any defense. I'll take Dart. I'm going with the graphic.
All right. I love it. It is Dylan Gabriel. It is the guy you crossed out immediately. That's surprising. Good for him. Did not know that. All right, so you are 1 for 2. I'm still open.
I thought he was a little cold recently for that. Maybe.
Wow. Yeah, actually, he had an awesome game this past weekend. I forgot who they
were. Oh yeah, West Virginia.
Didn't he have like 6 touchdowns in that game or something like that? He had something crazy.
I didn't see the numbers. That felt like a bounce back game for Oklahoma going into it. I was like, they're probably gonna get back on the horse here.
He had 423 yards, 5 touchdowns in that game, and then 3 rushing. He had 8 total touchdowns. He had 3 rushing touchdowns too. That's insane.
That's getting back. That's getting back on the horse after 2 down ones for sure.
That's like freaking Jayden Daniels type performance out there. Oh my God, we might be Oklahoma fans going to come at us again for crossing him out of the Heisman race too quickly. All right, question number 3. I didn't know he not scored 8 touchdowns. This team has the most rushing touchdowns in the Power 5. So this team has 32 rushing touchdowns, most in the Power 5. You got USC, Oklahoma, North Carolina, and LSU are your 4 possible answers. Man.
Ooh, after what you just told me about Gabriel, that gives me some pause.
Yeah.
No, I'm going LSU.
LSU? All right, that's the picture. Yes. I'm going to go USC, Oklahoma, North Carolina, LSU. I'm going to go give me Oklahoma, actually. Give me Oklahoma. Let's see if the Sooners did it.
That's the other one. It's Gabriel. Oh, it is USC.
It is USC. Wow, I did not expect that.
I was going LSU because a couple of weeks ago when we had all that, they run inside the red zone constantly, and then Daniels can just score from wherever he feels like.
Yeah.
I was going with the red zone running thing that we had a couple weeks ago.
Right. Damn, dude.
USC, Marshawn Lloyd, man. Is he leading the country in touchdowns?
Good question. I don't think he is, but he's got to be close then. Because Caleb has a few, but I don't know if he's got as many as he did last year. Obviously. Here, I'm looking right now. But, dude, I'm 0 for 3 right now, Dalton. We're getting into danger territory right now. You're 1 for 3.
You got real high and mighty on that 4 for 5 is what you did. You didn't. That's exactly what you did. You got don't get arrogant on me.
I got so cocky. Blake Corum leads the country with 18 rushing touchdowns this year. Okay. So that's
USC. Weird. They're just spreading it around because I don't see.
Dude,
Marshawn Lloyd only has 9.
Yeah, what the hell?
How many does Caleb have?
How the heck do they have? How do they have 32?
Caleb's got 11 and Lloyd has 9.
That's 20.
Who else is running these in?
They have that Austin Jones kid has a lot. I know. He's always scoring in every game. It feels like.
He has 6, and they have 1, 2, 3. They have 8 different players with a rushing touchdown this year.
That's very. I guess a lot of end arounds like Zachariah Branch. I'm sure.
All sorts of. Yeah. Wow.
Interesting.
Nope. All right.
Good question.
Right.
That's very surprising.
Dave wins. Dave wins that round.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I'm getting cocky right now, but I'm getting very nervous with my 0 for 3. So let's see. Question 4. Michigan and Georgia rank first and second in fewest missed tackles this season. Which Power 5 team is third with only 67? So Michigan's only missed 50 tackles this year. Georgia's missed 66. That's the first and second fewest in the, I believe, country. Or Power 5, excuse me. Power 5, which is third? So you got Rutgers, Oregon, Oregon State, and Clemson. So which of those Power 5 schools is third with the fewest missed tackles this year? Good question.
All right, if this is Clemson, then A&M should make the call. I'm between 2. I'm always between 2. I actually, for some reason, I kind of think it's Oregon State.
Interesting. I was going to say...
My only other one is Rutgers, and I go, look who they've played.
That's what I was thinking too. Rutgers. Oregon's very sound, though. Oregon's really sound on defense.
For some reason, I like Oregon State. I'm going with it.
All right, Oregon State. And then it was... Give me the Scarlet Knights, man. Give me my hometown team.
You going Rutgers.
Oh, it is Rutgers. Oh, let's go.
I was between the two of them.
Oh, thank God.
I was between the two of them. Man, oh man, I'm like, I mean, what is it? They lost. Was it 22-0 this week with Iowa?
Yeah.
They probably still didn't miss a tackle.
Did Iowa? You see that Iowa could have scored a touchdown that would have pushed the over, and they decided not to.
Oh, they weren't going to do that.
Oh,
no.
That
now it's tradition.
That they have to hit the under.
And Iowa under is just tradition now. You can't bust that.
The lowest over under ever, and is still hit. And then last week it was the lowest over under ever, and it hit. By 10.
If they score too much, those kids will start going in the portal. I can't have that.
Spencer Petras just entered the portal from Iowa. I didn't even know he was still there, honestly. So,
didn't he get hurt?
I think so. Yeah, he literally just entered the portal today. So that was semi-big news. But all right, 1 for 4 for each of us, Dalton. So let's see who can ultimately win, or if any of us can win in this one. Iowa and this team has allowed the fewest completions on deep throws in the Power 5 this year. You got Penn State, Alabama, Georgia, and Virginia Tech getting a shout out as well. So which team has allowed the fewest completions on deep throws this year? I'm going to just start off. I think it's Penn State. I'm going Penn State. Surprised that Iowa, Iowa's usually up there too, but I think Penn State, dude, Michigan did not throw the ball on them. They didn't even try throwing the ball.
They didn't. Yeah, I'm like, when you get a whole game with an advantage, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Penn State.
Didn't we have something like this already?
A few weeks ago, yeah.
The deep completion one.
And it wasn't any of those schools. I think it was like Clemson, wasn't it?
No, because you told me.
I remember deep touchdowns. I think deep touchdowns.
Was it deep touchdowns? And you took Penn State, and you told me it wasn't Penn State with the touchdowns.
And it wasn't.
And you were right. I took Penn State, and you told me it wasn't. And you were right, and you took somebody else.
I knew of 2. I knew of Indiana had 2 big ones, and there's 3 total. So I was like, there's no way there's only one more after that. I'm going Penn State for
Georgia.
Yeah, Bama, Georgia,
Penn State, and Virginia. I'm For as much as I want to say Bama, it's not going to be because they played LSU.
Yeah,
I'm going Penn State also. Give it to opposition.
Wow.
Even the good teams. One of them didn't throw, and one of them had Kyle McCord. I'm going Penn State also.
All right. Anticlimactic ending because both of us get it. Wow, it was Vatek. Look at Vatek. Vatek getting it. Wow.
Do the research. What are we doing?
Oh man.
Wow, they just get dinked and dunked like that? Wow.
Dude, Dalton, bad performance from both of us, man. 1 for 5.
Virginia Tech. I wouldn't have picked Virginia Tech for anything.
No.
I wanted to say Bama, and I just knew I was like, no, they played LSU.
The LSU thing held me back too. That's what I was thinking too. But
wow. When's the last time Penn State gave up? Well, they gave up one in the Indiana game.
I think it was 2.
Was it 2? Even then, that's not. I mean, it's 2.
Oh, on deep throws, I think one of them was just a catch and run. Honestly, so.
Oh right.
So yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Wow.
The only ones dragging down the Bama thing are the Texas game and probably the LSU.
Yeah,
the
Texas
game
LSU,
for sure. Was it Penn State? Who's dropping bombs on Penn State?
I don't know, man.
Indiana got 1. I don't. Harrison didn't get anything deep. He caught 15 slants on him.
Yeah. There might have been a couple that just barely crossed over 20 yards at Ohio State.
Wow.
That's surprising. Wow, dude, we sucked today. 1 for 5 for each of us.
Michigan even spotted him a whole game. Virginia Tech, I wonder what that number is. They must be really sitting back.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I think it was the number of 67. They're one behind was it Georgia? Or I don't know who the top 2 were. Michigan and one other school. But yeah, man. 1 for 5, man. Both of us 20% on the day.
Dave's the real winner here, man.
Dave stumped us, dude. That's somebody
get him a bonus or get him a gift card to Skyline Chili.
Yeah.
Or something. Jeez.
I'm not using it.
God.
I'm definitely not using it.
You still haven't gone?
No. It's so gross. Eli, I know, hates it too, dude. Eli is so mad at me that I haven't tried it.
I'm gonna get you stuck in a Twitter debate about this. I'm gonna do it.
We should just do like a taste test on air one day of just eating Skyline chili.
I'm all about that.
Hopefully, if we get to go to the Combine or Senior Bowl or something like that together and we get to do a show, that'd be hilarious if we do that. But also, we couldn't get Skyline chili then, honestly. But
yeah, right.
Dude, that'd be great. Yeah, I haven't tried it yet. It looks so gross, and I don't know. I don't really want to try it. But
you're wrong. You're just wrong on this. Sorry. You're wrong. You're wrong on 4 out of 5 trivia questions, and you're wrong on this. So I win today.
That's fair. Okay, that's what we got, though, for what was a loaded show covering a lot of different stories in college football. Appreciate you guys for watching this, if you did watch until the end. But, yeah, we got a loaded preview show coming on Wednesday as well. Some really interesting games. It's not like huge, massive top 10 showdowns like we had this past weekend, but some really, really interesting games. And we still might have a top 10 showdown between Washington and Oregon State, depending on where the committee ranks Oregon State after this week. But, yeah, so make sure you guys tune in for that on Wednesday. Some really, really good games that we're going to preview. And, yeah, only a couple more weeks, man. Only a couple more weeks until Conference Championship Saturday. That's crazy. So we're coming up to the end of it now. But for Dalton Wasserman, for producer Eli back there, I'm Max Chadwick, and we will see you guys on Wednesday for our Week 12 preview.